Bonjour, hi. Welcome back to another episode of CanadaOne. I'm your host, Matthew, and today we've got a lot of stories to go over. First, I want to talk about the current landscape of the EV market. We spoke about this, I want to say a couple months ago, but I just want to kind of revisit it because when we originally started looking at it, we already saw this massive slowdown. We saw that companies were pulling back, that EVs were unprofitable for most car companies, and that companies like Ford were spending $40,000 a car to subsidize their EVs. And I want to go look at the landscape right now and see, really with one major example, and how that's going to impact not only the Canadian economy, but the overall climate crisis, whatever plan that they're trying to implement. I also want to talk, as usual, about immigration and how even now the Liberal cabinet, Justin Trudeau's cabinet, is starting to say, maybe we went a little too crazy on immigration. Wow. Isn't that surprising? They're finally admitting it. I also want to talk a little bit about the current trans surgery situation, especially looking at the United States and how, like I predicted, doctors are making a lot of money transitioning kids. It's not a few. It's not just a couple hundred kids that are being transitioned. These are major sex surgeries on children as young as 14 and puberty blockers for kids as young as 8. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Also tied into the climate agenda, this idea that wildfires are getting worse because of climate change. Not only is that not true, but it's really due to government incompetence, and it kind of seems almost intentional that the Liberal governments are kind of letting a lot of these disasters happen, all to blame it on climate change. So we're going to look at what actually happened during the Jasper wildfires a few months ago. And finally, news story out of Canadian Tire about how they're exploiting their temporary foreign workers. So let's get right into it because we've got a lot to talk about. Very exciting show. So when looking at the EV market, what did we see? We saw massive hype a couple years ago in the 2019, 2020, 2021. Massive amounts of hype. Companies were looking at Tesla. They were going, okay, these guys are making money. People want electric vehicles. Our investors are demanding ESG bullshit. We're going to make our fleet fully electric by 2030. No, they're not. No car company will actually do that. But anyways, so all these companies are looking at, and they're just going, well, these EV things they're really popping off right now. Only problem was that the government of Europe, of Canada, of America are massively subsidizing electric vehicles. Why? To push the climate agenda. In the US, they passed the largest bill ever, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars for the Green New Deal. All these things, okay, in Canada, you can still get $7,500 tax credits on electric vehicles, which will be phased out next year, but for the moment, you can still get them. So even though electric vehicles on average are $20,000, $30,000 more expensive than your general gas car, you get massive government incentives, plus you get the benefit of being able to charge it instead of, paying for gas. So it'll pay for itself, which, very dubious claim. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Then we saw in Canada massive amounts of government subsidies going to try and build up domestic production for battery, lithium, exploration, car manufacturing, all sorts of things. Billions and billions of provincial and federal dollars being subsidized on large factories. We saw the Honda factory, the Ford factories, the LG battery plants. And one of the largest ones in Quebec is a $7 billion Northvolt battery plant. So Northvolt is a private Swedish battery maker, And they're currently supplying Volvo and Audi and Volkswagen for some of their battery components. And a few years ago, they announced that a massive $7 billion plant would be built in Quebec. This would create around 4,000 jobs and would take over a massive area. Only problem is, that's $7 billion. That's government financed. The Quebec government said that they would spend $2.9 billion in government subsidies. Ottawa said they would spend $1.34 billion in direct incentives, plus another $3 billion in tax credits and other incentives. Okay, so let's do a little bit of math before we get into the actual what I want to talk about. Just let's say if this thing was to work in full capacity and employ everybody they said they were going to employ, and the market was going perfectly. 4,000 jobs, $7 billion of taxpayer dollars. That's $1.75 million of your dollars, of taxpayer dollars, per job. In what universe does that make any sense? 4,000 jobs, $7 billion in subsidies. If an industry was truly as good as they're saying, they would not need this type of incentive to build the plant in Canada. Rather, what I'd like to see is just lower taxes, maybe, higher skilled workforce, high productivity workforce, so that corporations want to come to Canada, favorable tariff situations, favorable location, especially in relation to the United States. Why are we subsidizing large corporations with billions of dollars of taxpayer money, for a few thousand jobs? Anyways, this plant was supposed to open in 2026, but oopsies. Northvolt just came out saying that the market's a little bit tougher than we were expecting. Who would have guessed that? Okay, we totally reached the point of saturation for all the enthusiasts. Anyone who was going to buy an electric car has bought an electric car. Now, the industry is kind of having to pivot to try and get people who aren't going to buy an electric car to buy one. So it's a lot rougher now that we've reached around 10% of new vehicles sold being electric. Now it's getting a lot tougher for these companies to actually offload their electric cars. And obviously it's a mix of price, it's a mix of range anxiety, it's a mix of lack of infrastructure, and it's still quite new. And people, they're not used to that. And a lot of people, they look at it, especially for pickup trucks. The normal gas-powered pickup is much better than the electric one. Because generally, you're not really looking at the fuel cost for your pickup when you're hauling, concrete and stuff. But anyways, so this Swedish battery plant that's subsidized by $7 billion of Canadian taxpayer money, they're now saying, we might have to delay this plant by 18 months. Which I guarantee you this plant will never get built. Or if it will get built, we're going to have to spend billions more taxpayer dollars to get it built. You know why? Because Northvolt is having major financial problems. They just announced that they're going to be cutting 25% of their workforce, 1,600 jobs. They announced that they're partially shutting down one of their factories in Sweden. They're also in a complete liquidity crisis. They're looking to raise, and they're having a hard time looking to raise $200 million from investors and from customers to keep them going. So you're going to tell me that you're going to close part of your plant in Sweden, but you're totally going to build this massive 4,000 job, multi-billion dollar plant in Canada? Please. This thing is not getting built. They're saying that the environment the industry has changed, that the demand is no longer there. Who could have guessed that? Oh wait, Me, I guessed that. This was completely obvious. Could have guessed this from the beginning. They're saying that they're going to be conducting a strategic review and that the plant may be delayed by 18 months. And this is part of a broader trend in the electric vehicle market where you're seeing every car company shifting away from electric vehicles and moving towards what's actually been selling is hybrids. It seems like nobody in the industry, maybe besides Toyota, thought that, hey, instead of just radically jumping and trying to get consumers to radically shift their opinions on what driving is, maybe we should create a transitionary product where people can get acclimated to a little bit more electrification without going full in, and therefore allowing people to have one, maybe two cars in between the full transition from full gas to full electric. Hybrid sales are the fastest growing segment of the automotive industry right now. People cannot get enough of hybrids. They cannot get enough of plug-in hybrids. Why? Because they offer the perfect in-between point, the midpoint between full electrification and full gasoline. Hybrids are cheaper, they're as reliable, and they have the same amount of range as your normal car. It's part of the exact same infrastructure that you've always gone to. And they look the same, they sound the same. They're essentially the same car with just lower fuel mileage. Then you look at electric vehicles, and what do you see? Oh, you're gonna plug it in at my house? What? How does this work? I only have 300 miles of range. I only have 300 kilometers of range. What? Why is there only touchscreens? So, I think consumers obviously needed something to help them get through this massive change. And by the way, most people aren't going to go to electric unless a few key issues are solved. One, the price has to radically come down. If the average price of an electric vehicle needs to come down by probably $20,000 if they want to get more mainstream appeal. Two, the infrastructure network has to be massively built out. If you saw at every gas station a couple of charging ports that were high speed, like Tesla superchargers, that would go a long way. Three, the range of these electric vehicles have to be comparable to the range of a normal car. Because people are having a lot of range anxieties. People are scared. They do not want to get stranded because their electric vehicle dies. All right? And I'm not even like a hater of electric vehicles. I think that they're pretty cool. Okay? I like the Teslas. I like how they look. I love the Cybertruck. But it's like you have to fix a lot of these things. Plus, you look at the supply chain and they're using children in the Congo to mine for their nickel and their... So, people aren't really, they're not really that interested. That's why Toyota's approach, which was go full hybrid, almost full hybrid. I don't want to say full hybrid, but, go really focus on hybrid and even hydrogen. I think hydrogen is a good, even transition or even future technology that could be great for especially long haul trucking, because you don't need to haul around a several thousand-pound battery, which then diminishes your payload that you can transport, and it's a lot of weight, so you're getting a lot of diminishing returns. So I think hydrogen, hybrids are going to be the norm for a while before we actually see mass transition to electric vehicles. And the fact that a lot of government incentives are going away. The $7,500 tax credit here is being phased out next year. It's being cut in half, and then it's going to be cut in half again. So a lot of these, we're kind of seeing a little bit of EV fatigue. We went a little bit too fast, we went a little bit too hard, and now these companies are realizing, hey, maybe we went a little too extreme on this. Investors got a little too excited, and now we kind of have to pull back. So, you spent $7 billion of taxpayer money? Sorry, guys, we can't afford it. Speaking of climate change, let's talk about what actually happened during the Jasper wildfires. So everyone was claiming that this massive wildfire at the Jasper National Park in Alberta was climate change related. First of all, no, that is completely false. Obviously, it's false. Why? Well, first of all, let's look at what started it. A lightning struck a tree, and that started the fire. Okay. But then you could say, well, if it wasn't for climate change, the trees wouldn't be so flammable because it wouldn't be so hot. You know why the trees were so flammable? Because you had this beetle infestation that ate a bunch of pine trees that left them all dead, drying out, rotting out, and making them extremely flammable. Oh, but... Oh, also, by the way, Parks Canada knew about these highly flammable trees, and they refused to cut them down to actually, do proper forest management. And they've known about this since 2018. In a statement, someone said that, it wasn't a matter of if the park was going to get lit on fire. It's when. Since 2018, they've known this. Okay, and Parks Canada has routinely not properly managed this forest, and it seems kind of odd. Then add to the fact, once the fire started, 3 days after it started, the province of Alberta sent a convoy of roughly 20 fire trucks. And you know what Parks Canada said? No, we don't need you. And they sent them all back. Okay? You know what happened then? 32,000 hectares of forest burned down. $900 million in insured damages. 1/3 of the park structures destroyed. Okay? There was many investigations since 2018 saying that Parks Canada was kind of always reacting and never implementing any preventative measures. A lot of these fires, you look at Alberta, you look at British Columbia, look at California, look at Washington. These fires are not always caused by climate change. A lot of the time, it's caused by poor forest management. If you know you have thousands of trees that are highly flammable because of a bug infestation, and you decide not to cut them down to make maybe, a perimeter around the other trees that are safe, it seems like you're intentionally letting these natural disasters go on and be worse than they should have been, all so that you can claim we need to spend more and more of your dollars, of your taxpayer dollars, on climate change. We need the carbon tax. We need to, carbon's not the issue. I don't know if anybody did simple biology in high school. Ever heard of photosynthesis? Does plants eat carbon? What? Plants eat carbon, and that makes the plants grow. What? This was a statement from Alberta's Minister of Forestry and Parks. Quote, Parks Canada's approach, though well-intentioned, has drawn criticism for being reactive instead of proactive. They've known this since 2018. Report after report just ignored by Parks Canada. Then when the province tries to help by sending 20 firefighters, fire trucks, which could have massively helped the situation, at least curbed some of the damages, Parks Canada says no? We need to fire every single person in the federal government right now. This is outrageous. This is treason. You want to talk about the environment? I'm literally as woke as everyone else. I'm literally a major environmentalist. I like trees. I like the fact that my neighborhood doesn't have trash everywhere. I don't give a fuck about carbon. Okay? I don't want large companies spilling oil everywhere. I'm literally woke. And Parks Canada is committing treason. All right? Treason. All right. Let's move on, okay? We're getting out of hand. We're getting a little woke over here. No, but seriously, this is a massive issue. If you've known about this since 2018, if you've done absolutely no proactive measures, preventative measures, you should be fired and you should probably be executed. Let's execute. You know what? Execute everyone at Parks Canada. Okay? Maybe everyone in the Liberal government. Maybe let's just abolish the government and put in a new king. Okay? Can we get a king back? Please? That's all I want. I want Louis the 35th up in here. Anyways, let's talk about children getting their genitalia mutilated. Brand new report comes out of the United States. U.S. hospitals performed 14,000 sex changes from 2019 to 2023. And you know who's profiting? Doctors are making bank off of these transitions. Okay, these surgeries, they're making money. Roughly $120 million in that same period for those 14,000 surgeries. And by the way, this number is massively underestimated because it doesn't take into account several insurers, and it also doesn't take into account cash payments. Wait, sorry, I said 14,000 sex changes. Okay. That's bad, but on kids. Sorry, I didn't put that in. They did 14,000 sex changes on kids. First of all sex changes should be banned. On kids, you should have the death penalty. Oh, but maybe these kids, they're 17, 18, right? First of all, libtard, I'm gonna decapitated. Death penalty. These people should all be murdered. All these, literally every single one of these doctors should be put into prison. And probably given, the death penalty. Maybe a little bit of torture. But these kids, they're old enough to make, they're like 16, 17 to make decisions. So out of those 14,000, let's break it down. 5.8 thousand were actual surgeries. So actual sex change operations where they cut off the dick, they cut off the tits, whatever. The youngest of those 5.8 thousand surgeries, which is quite common, age 14 for a double mastectomy. Is that not, does nobody care about that? You're getting 14-year-old girls to cut off their breasts? Are you insane? Then, 8.6 thousand of those 14,000 were given puberty blockers, also known as sterilization drugs, because puberty blockers are not reversible, unlike what all these libtards are saying. They kill the sex drive, and they're essentially chemically castrating a bunch of kids. You know what age the youngest ones have received for these sterilization drugs? Age 8. If you don't think these people are pure evil, okay, liberalism is a failed ideology. We are getting into territories that even 1920s Germany couldn't have imagined. Okay? If you told anybody about this 10 years ago, you would have had your head on a stick. Okay? These doctors are profiting by sterilizing, mutilating, and castrating kids. Ages 8 and up. The parents should be given the death penalty. The doctors should be given the death penalty. These kids are seriously mentally ill and should probably be put into mental institutions. But maybe it's not their fault. Maybe they've been peer pressured. Maybe the parents just don't know what's going on. They think the kids are going to kill themselves. If a doctor, this is what happened to Elon Musk. The doctor says, listen, your kid's going to kill himself if he doesn't get these surgeries. And he's like, okay. Death penalty. That's all I can say, because you're profiting hundreds of millions of dollars off of sterilizing kids, and nobody cares. oh, but these kids are just trying to live their life. These kids are mentally ill. These kids are autistic most of the time. The vast majority of them are have high levels of at least 3 different mental comorbidities. So these kids are mentally unstable. They're being pressured probably by their friend group, probably by social media. Their parents, maybe they don't really know what's happening, or if their parents do know what's happening, they're pushing it in a very bad way. They're being influenced by their parents. Oh, look, my son is trans. Okay, let's, I don't advocate for violence. I'm not advocating, but death penalty. I'm sorry. This is what it's come to. Our society is degenerating at a speed never before seen. Okay? Now, obviously, these people are gonna, if you just look at generational lens, these people are gonna breed themselves out. If you get chemically castrated when you're 8, you're not gonna have kids. And therefore, you can't really pass on those mental illness genes or that heritability to your children. And the cycle kind of ends there. So, you look at liberalism, you look at, LGBT, fuck you. And what's going to happen in 1 or 2 generations, the vast majority of these people are just going to, not pass on any genes. And therefore that, that line is going to be severed. And, this goes into a greater question regarding demographics. And, you look at the United States right now, the platform that the Democrats are running on are, you should have the right to kill your baby. And it's not like Trump's really running against that, okay? He's also pro-abortion. But, when you have, this is why women shouldn't vote, okay? And I'm not even making a statement of just women shouldn't vote. I think most people shouldn't vote. If you are not a land-owning man who's born in Canada or in America or whatever country that you're voting in, I don't think you should vote. Landowning man above the age of 18 who's probably married, that would probably be the 4 criteria, and that would drastically reduce the size of the voting bloc, because that's what it's been. When the Constitution was founded in the United States, they kind of intended it to be that way because they needed people who were highly intelligible, people who were able to take risk, people who were able to have, who had leadership traits. They didn't want just anybody, any 18-year-old libtard, streamer to be able to vote. They didn't envision that, okay? But when you have these single issues and nobody's talking about, these trans surgeries. And by the way, if you think the conservatives in Canada are denouncing any of this, nope. The conservatives, Pierre Poilievre's conservatives, have routinely voted in favor of allowing these types of surgeries to happen on multiple occasions. In fact, nobody in the conservative cabinet has ever voted against anything regarding surgeries and trans surgeries and puberty blockers and whatnot. By the way, puberty blockers are banned in Britain, okay? They're banned. It's illegal there. But in Canada, in America, and finally some states are clamping down, but in the vast majority of America and in Canada, it's completely legal. Now we're having provinces here in Canada who are banning it. Alberta's really starting to crack down, which, at least Danielle Smith is doing something good. Okay, I don't agree with everything Danielle Smith does, but, respect where respect is due, okay? Game is game, as they say. But this is a serious crisis, and people are taking large amounts of advantage, okay? These doctors should be punished. This should be banned. This is disgusting, degenerate, and horrible. Now let's talk about something else that's disgusting, degenerate, and horrible. Let's talk about immigration. A few days ago, I was in school and I saw a transgender Indian. He was a man pretending to be a girl, and it was disgusting. He had a unibrow, long hair, and was wearing a dress. It was really off-putting. And, a few weeks before that, I saw a transgender Mexican who was fat, by the way, obviously. Obviously, he was fat. And it was a man with a mustache with short hair who was obese, who was waddling down the sidewalk and speaking to a friend, sounded very feminine. So, do what you will with that. I was visibly disgusted, and that ruined my day. Anyways, speaking of ruining my day, the liberals are saying that maybe we were a little too slow on curbing immigration. Like, I'm so done with these people. But Pierre Poilievre is going to be different. Shut up. I'm just a simple goy from the prairies. What are you talking about, Pierre Poilievre? Please, somebody ban him. Somebody ban everybody in Canadian politics. Except for... Okay, and I'm not even biased. That was a quote from Mark Miller, who said we were a little too slow on immigration. Okay, let's talk about it. So as we've spoken about, Justin Trudeau implemented quite a I want to say significant U-turn on immigration. I say significant with quotations because it's significant for the Liberals, but it's truly a drop in the bucket. What they implemented was that there was a new ban on low-wage temporary foreign workers in industries with unemployment above 6%. And this obviously excludes construction, healthcare, and farming. So, what's the point? But anyways, what this actually leads to is a 65,000 person reduction in temporary foreign workers. Oh, that's pretty good. Just by the way, there are 2.8 million temporary residents in Canada right now. All right? So it's great, isn't it? Then they were also beginning to curb and introduce caps on international students for universities, CEGEPs, and colleges in Canada. Where all these colleges are like, and these universities, they're complaining. They're like, we're going to be bankrupt without these international students. Because that's really their bread and butter. Because they can charge 10 times more than we can charge your average Canadian, in province and out of province, to go to these universities. And, this has been large amounts of criticism. And, we've spoken about these diploma mills and how people just go to these colleges, get these fake business degrees, and then work at, your low-wage job, and then try and get permanent residency or citizenships. Well, what did we see? As the cap have been introduced, enrollment for international students has dropped, and that led to a drastic decrease in rent prices. Who would have thought that lowering immigration solves the housing crisis? What? But anyways, you look at the actual numbers, and these universities are complaining about considerable reductions. In the first 7 months of this year, we saw a 5% reduction, with the university and the government issuing 280,000 new student visas. 5% reduction. So, great job, I guess. And by the way, these students, when you come here and you apply for a student visa, technically, you're supposed to have enough money to live, to eat, to house yourself, and to pay for studies and your textbooks and any material for the duration of the visa. Only thing is, the government allows international students to work for 24 hours per week. Just for reference, in the United States, it's 0. You're not allowed to work when you're on a student visa. And it should be 0. If you have the means to come over here, why do you need to work? And by the way, that 24 hours is not being enforced. All right? Who's policing this? Nobody. You think Tim Hortons is going to report the fact that they've got international students working 30, 40 hours a week? Nope. And, this is a broader trend when you look at, obviously, immigration. We've spoken about this so much in 2023, because I have to keep repeating it because it's like such a huge number that nobody seems to like grasp it. 2.2 million people entered the country in 2023. Canada just went up to 41 million people in population. We're seeing the fastest growth rate of any developed country on the planet. You look at the trend, it's literally exponential. It doesn't end. Our growth rate is eclipsing America. It's eclipsing Europe. It's eclipsing any other developed nation because of mass immigration. And it's fundamentally changing the demographics. It's fundamentally hurting our economy, our government's finances, our society. We have cities that are being wrecked. Brampton just got rated the #1 city in the world with the most foreign-born population. At 69% of the entirety of Brampton is born outside of Canada. How is this a Canadian city anymore? Somebody explain me that. Where's the diversity when you've removed all the Canadians and you've replaced it with a jabillion Indians? So yes, Mark Miller, this is an alarming trend, and you have been too slow. Immigration needs to be at 0 plus deportation. And now there's a massive issue with you have all these millions of international students on visas and temporary foreign workers who are now realizing, oh shit, our visas are about to end, and we're not going to be permanent residents, and we're going to have to go back to our shithole countries. So now they're protesting. Good enough to work, good enough to stay. No, it's not. You provide nothing. Oh, but they're doing jobs that no Canadian wants to do. That's a lie created by the corporate media to shift the narrative away from paying Canadians real wages and turning us into a shitty third world country. Import the third world, become the third world. Thank you as always for listening. Stay CanadaOne. Stay Canada first. We'll catch you next time.